And I will stop at this point, and we will continue on with our program, and thank everyone so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Albert. Now, our next guest is Melinda Noble. She's an award-winning leader known for her exceptional impact, innovation, and advocacy for equality. She's currently the interim executive director for Tennessee Justice for Our Neighbors, which provides compassionate immigration legal services to our neighbors seeking humanitarian relief. Please give a warm welcome to Melinda.
Thanks for that warm introduction, Christina. As she mentioned, I'm Melinda Noble. Today I'm coming to you on behalf of Tennessee Justice for Our Neighbors, a nonprofit law firm providing legal representation to immigrants seeking humanitarian relief. We also educate the community about issues related to immigration and advocate for immigrant rights and dignity. Our clients are the global majority. They may have been born in some 50 countries around the world, but they've made lives for themselves here in this country and right here in this district. They are your neighbors, they're your friends and your colleagues, they're you. Our team at JFON works with these folks day in and day out, and we witness the experiences and the impacts of families being torn apart, families who continue living in fear. That includes the distraught abuelita whose grandson was detained during the ICE sweeps in May. It's the terrified mother-to-be whose baby is due later this year, asking whether the birth certificate will include the words U.S. citizen. And it's the Afghan asylum seekers who were unable to bring their families when they first fled to this country and are now being told by the State Department that the travel ban applies to them, meaning they're now forbidden from bringing their families with them. One thing has become very clear. This administration is dedicated to ending all forms of immigration to the U.S., legal or otherwise. They're systematically limiting legal pathways and revoking legal statuses, while also establishing new ways of criminalizing being undocumented. And these decisions are affecting people who thought they were safe, when in reality, it was just a matter of time before they too were targeted. Every day unlocks a new terror for this community. But here's the thing, we cannot lose hope. We cannot sink into that fear. That's exactly what this administration wants us to do. After all, fear divides us, right? Instead, we must come together in solidarity. We may all have different stories of origin, and we might even speak different languages at home, but we're all humans, and we're all deserving of receiving and giving dignity and respect. And at the end of the day, we're all living here together in this community side by side as neighbors. So this is the time to continue showing up to these events. Keep yourself informed, read beyond the headlines and beyond the clickbait, call your representatives, send them emails. It actually does matter. Check in on your immigrant neighbors and start a dialogue with them. Whether you've got 10 minutes or 10 hours to give, no effort is too small. And what I want to remind you today is that we all have a role to play in this ecosystem. I encourage you to use your voice, to use your dollar, and to use your vote. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melinda, for that incredible advice. Our next guest needs a huge round of applause when she comes out. She's a 17-year-old USN student, and this is her first time doing anything like this. She wrote a beautiful poem, Independently on her own, this wasn't part of her school curriculum. She just decided to write it from her heart. Here she is, 17-year-old Brecken Forsey.
America wears a flag like a hospital gown, open in the back, stitched with myths and stained with forgetting. America is a mansion with gold doorknobs and blood under the floorboards. She serves champagne to billionaires while children drink lead from faucets lined in rust. A man in a suit builds rockets while women bleed out in parking lots, told their wombs are public domain now, told the state knows better than to scream in their own bones, told choice was a luxury they no longer qualify for, that health is a product and justice a lottery ticket. The Constitution hangs like an antique rifle, polished, unused, and pointed at the past. I watch children practice lockdown drills with the same small hands they used to build block towers. I watch women bleed rights onto pavement while men in pressed suits debate whether their pain is marketable. I watch ice melt like a throat closing, the planet begging in a language we've muted for convenience. And still, they tell us it's working, that this is what democracy looks like. No, this is what grief looks like when it's forced to wear red, white, and blue. America, you are the unfinished poem scratched into the desk of a student who was never taught how to dream outside a test score. A mother crosses borders with her baby sewn to her chest, running from a fire lit by a country that now greets her with cages. We tell her there is no room, but we make room for oil, for stock options, for the next war that looks good on a campaign ad. She speaks in the language of survival, but we don't translate pain without profit. And still, women march, with coat hangers raised like broken flags, with rage etched on their hips and hope curled in the fists of their daughters. America sells freedom like a brand and puts compassion on backorder. But I believe not in her institutions, her marble monuments, her eagle-bled slogans, but in the quiet rebellion of kindness. Still we rise not from pride, but from protest, not for stars and stripes, but for the quiet revolutions happening in every corner they pretend not to see. In the fire escape garden a girl plants in the Bronx, in the protest signs written in every language grief knows, in the hands that still reach for the broken when all the headlines say step over. A girl teaching her grandmother English on a subway bench, an immigrant writing code for a country that won't learn his name but needs his hands. There is a country buried inside the country, so let them keep their towers. Let them count their coins until they choke on them. We are the fire in the foundation, the America they don't advertise, and we are not done rising.
That was incredible. I know Brecken told me she wanted to go into music management as her career, but I hope you still continue to write, because you are unbelievable. It's funny, I'm just looking around and I don't see Andy Ogles here to hear any of those words. I don't know, did anybody see him? No? Okay, well, too bad, his loss. Thank you again, Albert and Melinda, and of course Brecken, for all of your incredible words. Love, light, kindness, joy, and good trouble. These are all words I use to describe the incredible Justin Jones. I have watched him in the face of cruelty be brave. I have seen him not back down to bullies in the GOP, but instead turn their darkness into light. In fact, I met Justin after he received a punishment of being put on the House Agricultural Committee But what did Justin do? He turned something the GOP deemed negative into a positive. Visiting farmers around the state, asking them questions, falling in love with horseback riding, and coming over to my house to hug some cows. Yeah, that's how we met. I have a hobby farm. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I asked him if he needed to hug a cow, and it turns out he did want to. So that's what we have learned to do together, to heal through nature in a very cruel world. He inspires me and my family every day to have hope, to choose hope. Without further ado, the amazing Justin Jones.
Thank you all. Show me what democracy looks like. Show me what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
Thank you all for being here today. This is what democracy looks like. This town hall is about sending a message that there's much more that unites us than divides us. You know, when you're elected to office, whether at the state or federal level, one of the most basic job responsibilities is to show up in your district, to be willing to answer questions, be willing to talk to your constituents, and actually being willing to stay in the community you claim to represent. Unfortunately, the congressman for this district, Andy Ogles, has been missing in action. Unfortunately, he has instead chosen to traffic in the politics of fear and division, trying to make us afraid of our neighbors, trying to make us afraid of multiracial democracy. Let me give you a few examples, since he could not be here today. I took the liberty of printing his tweets from this week to show you his messaging and to get your response. From one day ago, Andy Ogle's tweet: "In America, our national language is English. If you don't know it, learn it. It's a beautiful language with words like naturalization and assimilation." Can I ask a question, Congressional District 5? How many people here speak more than one language? That's about half the room. Next tweet from a couple days ago. "Zoran Little Mohammed Mamdani is an anti-Semitic socialist communist who will destroy the great city of New York. He needs to be deported, which is why I'm calling for him to be subject to denaturalization proceedings." Okay, how about this one? Maybe this will be more appealing to the constituents. "Yup, we can run D.C. Senator Mike Lee and I introduced the Bowser Act to give Congress the authority to take back our capital city. This is huge momentum." Does anybody here live in Washington, D.C.? All right. July 3rd, "I'm asking Secretary Burgum to put Trump on Mount Rushmore. Given the scale and scope of President Trump's recent achievements, especially the impending enactment of the Big Beautiful Bill, the historic act that will ignite America's golden age, it is essential that we immortalize him." Can I ask you a question? Is putting Trump on Mount Rushmore going to make your rent cheaper? Is it going to give you access to health care or living wages? Is it going to fund our public schools? All right, this is the last one, because we've had enough of this foolishness. He retweeted a tweet that says, "Anybody who eats with their hands like this should be barred from ever being allowed in American politics. Socialism bad, Islamist terrorists bad, third world customs bad." Does anyone here, have you ever had a burrito? Has anybody here ever eaten with your hands? All right, just wanted to check. This is the insanity, and I wanted to start with that because this is what it's like to be an unserious lawmaker. This is what it means when you're more focused on clickbait and being a professional troll than you are about being a servant of the people. We are here today, Congressional District 5, because we know that this does not represent our community, our district, or the people of this beautiful, multiracial, multi-faith, multi-generational community that have assembled here today. This is what Nashville looks like. This is what Antioch looks like. And this is what Tennessee looks like. And there's no reason to be afraid. There's no reason to be afraid. And I would like to make clear, too, that this town hall today is a town hall that is welcome to all people. We are people of all political persuasions. If you are of a Republican, Democrat, Independent, this is not about left versus right. This is about the people versus the problem. That's what we're here assembled to be here for today. What we are facing is a politics of theft. We have folks who have voted just recently to steal from Medicaid, to steal from Social Security, to steal from veterans' benefits, all to pay for billionaire and corporate tax cuts, not to make your lives better. And what do they do? What do they do as costs go up and salaries remain stagnant? What do they do when Tennesseans are going to be struggling? Thousands, people with disabilities without Medicaid. What are they going to try and have us do? They're going to have us try and blame our neighbor. They're going to say, blame the trans student, blame the Muslim woman, blame the immigrant, the refugee, instead of blaming the billionaires and corporate greed that is responsible for the inequality we're facing right now. And so we come here to say that if they come for one of us, we come here as a district to say you're coming for all of us. We're tired of the politics of division. To those who may have felt, I had my dear sister sitting in the front here with the red bandana, and he said, we have not had events like this in our district. And we need to change that. How many of you, is this your first town hall that you've ever attended? Let's hear you clap so we can hear you. How many of you, is this your first town hall with a federal congressional representative that you've attended? We're here to change that. This is what our government should look like. We should be responsive to the needs of our communities. We should be responsive to the pain. That those who are proximate to the pain should be proximate to the power. That people in our district should not be choosing between affording groceries and paying for their prescriptions. That is what we're here to say today. We're here to answer your questions. Because as I look across this room, yesterday my colleagues in the General Assembly, in the Republican House Caucus, sent out a fake tweet. A fake flyer trying to portray this event as a violent event, saying that we are calling for violence, trying to intimidate people from coming. And there were people who said, is it still safe to come? Because their goal was to intimidate us. But I think we filled every seat in this auditorium. That is what power of the people looks like. We're not here to speak truth to power, but we want to say we represent a new paradigm that says in power, in our collective power, in people power, we will speak truth. And I do believe that the rooms like this will transform the heart of the state, transform this district, and get these hate mongers out from representing the honorable people of this district. And so without further ado, I am so excited to introduce my dear sister who comes from Minnesota's 5th Congressional District to Tennessee's 5th Congressional District, the vice chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, a truth teller, somebody who's willing to be a voice of conscience, of conviction and courage in a time where we have a lot of people with a lot of political power but not a lot of courage when it comes to their position. Somebody who's a servant of the people. Just last year we were in her district in Minnesota. And this Congresswoman, I've never done so many events in one day. We were with students where the Congresswoman herself was knocking doors of dormitories, telling students come out and vote. We met with people impacted by gun violence. We met with those who are advocating for peace and justice. We worked with this multiracial, multi-faith coalition that showed me what is possible for our state. And so I messaged her after I saw the vitriol coming from Congressman Andy Ogles and said, sister, would you please come and give voice? Because we have a lot of people here, particularly in Antioch, who are afraid right now, who are being targeted and demonized and traumatized right now. And she said she can be here on Saturday. And so we organized this in literally less than 5 days. But you turned out because you know that this matters. You turned out because you know that this represents the hope and vision of what we ought to be as a nation. And so I know she doesn't, if I read her whole bio, we'll be here for 10 days, and so I'll be very brief. Congressman Ilhan Omar represents Minnesota's 5th Congressional District in the U.S. House of Representatives, which includes Minneapolis and surrounding suburbs. An experienced Twin Cities policy analyst, organizer, public speaker, and advocate, Congresswoman Omar was sworn into office on January 2019, making her the first African refugee to become a member of Congress, the first woman of color to represent Minnesota, and one of the first 2 Muslim American women elected to the U.S. Congress. Please join me in welcoming our honorary Congress member, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar.
What's the chant, Justin? Show me what democracy looks like. Show me what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
Thank you, Antioch, for welcoming me. I am really honored to be here with my brother, Justin Jones, your representative here in Tennessee. And it is kind of sad to see Andy Ogles didn't show up. I was kind of looking forward to having a little chat with him. You know, I must say, I was surprised when Justin asked the audience if this was their first town hall they attended. And it sounded like from backstage, about 2/3 of you clapped for that. So thank you so much for coming out and participating in our democracy. Thank you for welcoming this Midwestern representative to the South, God's land. They tell me this is where God and freedom and love for country lives, so I'm so glad to be here with you all. You know, when I ran for office, I made 3 promises. The 3 promises were, 1, that I would hold a town hall every single month so that I would hear directly from my constituents and that I would make sure to answer their questions and give them updates on both what we were doing back in Washington, D.C. and in the district, Minnesota's fighting 5th. What I also promised was that I was not going to take any corporate contributions. Because I believe if you represent the people, then you put them first and not the interests of the corporations. And the 3rd promise I made, and Justin knows this deeply, is that I would never give an audience to a lobbyist. Because the people I represent do not have lobbyists. And it was shock to me when I got to Congress to find myself in the minority. Many of my colleagues would say, Ilhan, what do you mean you hold town halls every single month? What do you mean you allow the audience to ask questions without being vetted? What do you mean that your town halls are open to all of your constituents, whether they voted for you or not? And a lot of them would say to me, how are you able to get the insights of what you need to do without meeting with lobbyists? And so my answer to them has been, I know what to do because I listen to the people I represent. I have the expertise visiting me every single day in my town halls, in my district office, in my congressional office, because my constituents are the experts on what they need in their lives. And I know that as a representative of the people, that it is important that we understand as members of Congress, we don't only represent those who vote for us. We represent those who don't vote for us as well. We represent the people who show up to every single town hall. We represent the people who give, 5-minute speeches praising us and all the work that we are doing. But we also represent the people who come angry. We represent the ones who want to curse us out. We represent the ones who don't agree on the votes that we take, and the ones who are very disappointed in us. Because goddamn it, in a representative democracy, that is what you are supposed to do. So I am here today for 2 reasons. When Justin called, I never say no. Because I always say, if I wanted a little brother, Justin would be the little brother I would want. And the second reason is that I was shocked. I was shocked that this was a community that had not had their member of Congress holding a town hall. I was shocked that you all do not get the opportunity to hear what your member of Congress has been up to in Congress, and you also do not get to ask questions, to confront them, to register your disappointment. And so I am here to do that for you today. So you heard a little bit about what your member of Congress has been busy with. Justin gave you a snippet. And I will say, go to my official Twitter account or go to my personal Twitter account and contrast that with your member of Congress. What you will see is me talking about the disparities that we have, me saying this is the things that we need to do for our constituents, me talking about where our resources, our tax dollars should be spent, which is here in America, taking care of those that are most vulnerable. And you will hear, as Justin read some of those tweets, your member of Congress spewing hateful rhetoric, discriminating against Muslims having the ability to exercise their constitutional right, not only to vote, but to represent their neighbors. You will hear things that are none of his business, because if you represent Tennessee, why the heck do you care what the hell is happening in New York? Right? You will hear the fact that he's simming for his king, Donald Trump, and wants him on Mount Rushmore to join the greats of our country. This is somebody who's been convicted for 37 times. This is someone who's credibly accused of sexual assault, right? This is someone who is caging and separating families. This is someone who's reshaping the idea and the narrative and the ideals of this nation. This is someone who's constantly violating the Constitution when he takes away the constitutional right of members of Congress to allocate resources for our constituents. This is someone who is laughing in the face of our justice, of our courts, and not abiding by court orders and disobeying the Supreme Court. This is the person he wants memorialized on Mount Rushmore next to George Washington. Think about that. So it tells you that Andy Ogles is not a serious congressman. It tells you that this is someone who's chasing clout. This is someone who's thinking about maybe a position in the cabinet. Keep dreaming, Andy. This is someone who knows he can get away with this. And we know here in this room that in the next election cycle, we are going to hold him accountable. Because the diversity in this room tells me that you believe in the America that I believe in. The diversity in this room tells me that you are not rightfully represented by a member who does not believe our immigrants belong here. The diversity in this room tells me that you do not believe that you should be represented by someone who spent the last 2 weeks spewing anti-Muslim rhetoric. And before I really truly get into what Andy has been up to, I want to say 2 things. One, I don't know how Andy eats. And I don't know how this has been a talking point. But majority of us at least had 1 or 2 meals where eating with our hands is required. So I don't even know how that's an insult or a slur. And I don't understand, right, why in America it is not allowed for people to have foods that they traditionally had in their homelands or that are part of their ancestry. I don't care if you're white, brown, or black, if you are first generation, second generation, or if you're indigenous to this land. We all have foods that require for us to eat with our hands. So I don't even know why that's slurred. And there's a second thing that has been bothering me. How many of you are Christian in this room? How many of you would think it's an insult if I called you little Jesus? Right? Like, if I'm Christian, I would like to be called little Jesus. Sure. Why not? I'm Muslim. We believe Jesus is a prophet. We call him Isa. Majority of our children are named Isa. I would consider them as little Jesus. So for some reason, he thinks it's an insult to call someone little Muhammad. I actually think that's a compliment. I really do. I really think that is a compliment. I think little Moses would be a compliment. Little Adam would be a compliment. Little Abraham would be a compliment. Just keep going. Little Noah, Jonas, let's keep going, right? Like, let's, we could all be little of them. But on a serious note, we had just passed the big, ugly bill. And that might be one of the reasons Andy is not holding a town hall, because he's hiding from the fact that he has betrayed his constituents. We talk in Congress a lot with our Republican colleagues who say, people who get maybe $2 or $6 of nutrition benefits are mooching off of the system. But what they are never troubled with is Elon Musk getting $8 million a day in subsidies. So I ask you all in this audience, which one troubles you more? Your neighbor getting $2 a day to get food, or Elon Musk getting $8 million a day? You can say it. And I think a lot about the fact that they think it is okay to take healthcare away from 17 million Americans, because somehow they think that you're unwilling to work and sit in your mother's basement because you have healthcare coverage. Do you have healthcare coverage? Does that feed you? Does that feed you? Does it clothe you? Does it pay for your bills? I mean, really, it's obscene and absurd, the kind of arguments that Republicans in Congress make. And they think that we are dumb enough as Americans, as voters, as taxpayers, to believe those lies. And what they also do not tell you is that we are interconnected. Because when you take away healthcare from 17 million people. What you essentially then do is make sure that urban clinics and hospitals are closing down. What you are doing is making sure that people, instead of getting preventive care, that they are rushing to the emergency center. And what that essentially does is it impacts all of us who might be insured by private insurers. So tomorrow when you have a real emergency, you are not going to be on the front of the line. Tomorrow when you need special services, and that essential service has been shut down, that means you are not going to get it. So when they make us focused on taking away programs for others, what they forget to tell us is that we also will be impacted. You hear right now with immigration, so many people wrote songs, supported, created Cubans for Trump, Venezuelans for Trump. They were really excited because they thought somebody else was getting deported, that they were not going to be on the chopping block. And now we see their TikTok videos, we see them doing interviews, and they're like, I didn't think he was gonna come for my wife. My wife and I were supporters of him. We didn't think he was gonna come for my mom. My mom and I were supporters of him. I didn't think he was gonna come for my grandpa. My grandpa and I were supporters of him. The reality is, when they come for one of us, they're eventually gonna come for all of us. When the DOGE cuts were being implemented, we talked about the weather services and how many of the programs that they were cutting and these essential services where they were leaving people to, eventually face the consequences, we laid it out for them. We said these cuts are eventually going to lead to death. And they said, no, you're hyperbolic. Democrats are always exaggerating, right? You're not being honest about what will eventually happen. People can sustain themselves, counties can fill the gap, states can fill the gap, cities can fill the gap. And in Kerr County, Texas, the Biden administration offered them $10.2 million. And they said, we do not need your money. And today, unfortunately, the unthinkable has happened. And instead of taking that money, putting in, right, what they might need in order to protect themselves, they did the partisan thing and said, we don't need Democrats' money in Texas, we can take care of ourselves. And today we have dozens of little girls between the ages of 8 and 13. My youngest is a 13-year-old daughter. And I watch the news with her as they continue to discover bodies. And it is a mother's and a father's or any parent's worst nightmare to know that your government could have done something to protect the lives of your children. And they did not. Worse yet, they intentionally chose to do nothing. And now you are all left to bury them. And so we have policies and policymakers that are very much interested in doing us against them, and you have policymakers that are saying we are in this together because the United States of America means that we are united as Americans in taking care of one another. So I'm excited to answer your questions, and I'll leave you with this. There is a lot of despair. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of disconnectedness. And the only way we move forward as a country united is to not look down on another, but to lift each other up. It's not to rejoice in each other's pain, but it's to feel each other's pain. And I hope that you all leave this room today promising that you will connect or reconnect with a neighbor. That regardless who they might vote for, what their politics might be, that you don't leave them behind, that you keep that connection, that dialogue, that conversation. Because in this country, we have gone too far. We have gone too far. We need to start seeing each other as each other's neighbor, as each other's siblings, as each other's children. I have Trump voting in-laws. Right? And I tell people this all the time, you know, that I might have my feelings about people who vote for Trump. But I know that something happened along the way for their transformation into believing that that man cared about America and them. And it is up to us to make sure they see it otherwise. And so I have committed to making sure that I see them as my loving in-laws. And they continue to see me as their loving daughter-in-law. To the chagrin of Fox News, who constantly demonizes me as the devil in the flesh. Right? When I'm at their Thanksgiving dinner table, I am just Ilhan to them. And I hold that dearly because we all know and have in our lives people who we do not agree with on everything. Actually, that would be insane if we had people in our lives that we agree with on everything. And so try to find the thing that holds our common humanity, and let's build on that. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for those incredible words, and also a reminder to really work hard and connect with your community. I have a lot to do with my neighbors, a lot of work to do. Okay, now this is the great part. You guys get to ask questions. There's a lot of folks in the room, which is so incredible, but if you could just keep it brief when you ask a question so we can get to as many as possible. You're just going to raise your hand. There's going to be mics floating around, and you'll be called upon. And again, if you could keep it short and to the point, the question, that would be incredible, so we could hear from as many folks as possible. So let's start. Yeah,
Right here, in the green.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. My name is Lisa. I have a very serious question. And I spend a couple hours a day figuring out, I come from a sales background. So I have looked at Nashville from a sales mind, and where are the 30% voters that did not turn out? And I figured them out, and I will not tell the politicians, because they don't talk to the people. So, take it outside of Nashville. Is there a place I can look that we are all looking, us good people that want everybody to be good with us, to look at hotspots that need help? Like Antioch is real obvious. That's Tennessee. But outside of Tennessee,
We've seen, the construction of Alcatraz, Alligator Alcatraz. We're seeing people being abducted and sent to dungeons in foreign countries. Some people disappearing with no accounting for where they have gone. Their families are not able to get a single response. We're seeing DECA being threatened. We're seeing a lot of the policies that are passing. I know Justin was telling me that there's been a debate here to make it so that young people who are undocumented are not able to go to our public schools. And so it is challenging times. What I would tell them is that we've been through a lot as a nation. The pendulum always swings to keep the faith. And hopefully, as they go through their education, the window will open. There will be a different leadership, and we will be able to have our country again be a beacon of hope for so many people around the world.
I think one thing we have to speak in this space is that this is the first mass gathering we're having in this part of our community since the acts of terror that occurred at the first week of May here in Southeast Nashville. 196 people kidnapped within 5 days. The majority of whom the Department of Homeland Security admitted had never been convicted of any crime. Still many who we do not know where they are. And unlike other states like California, New York, we actually have seen it in collaboration with our state government leaders. Governor Bill Lee, the Tennessee Highway Patrol, participated in those raids and racial profiling stops. In fact, we came out on Antioch Pike on the night of May 9th, and I was out there trying to inform people of their rights, document what was happening. And we saw ICE agents within the Tennessee Highway Patrol vehicles, and as I went up as a lawmaker in my district, trying to just get conduct my oversight capacity as we do with the Tennessee Highway Patrol, they chose to shine the flashlights. We could not even record them and refused to answer our questions. And what we saw, as you know, I just filed the Stop American Gestapo Act, trying to ban law enforcement from running laws. Something that even some of our Republicans have said is common sense, because we know that it's also a bill about stopping human trafficking. It's a bill about stopping, these attacks that make it unsafe for people to be out. If you see a group of men in plaid shirts with masks, sunglasses, and baseball caps, and a white man and tell you to get in, I would think it was a kidnapping happening. And so that's exactly what we have to name it for, and we must continue to show up. We must recognize, too, that it's being done in collaboration with our state government. We know that during our special session earlier this year, the Tennessee House Republicans passed a partisan bill that, number one, creates an office, a czar of immigration attacks in our community to collaborate with the federal government. Number two, our local officials vote for what they deem to be sanctuary city policies. They will be charged with a felony. I mean, this is something that is un-American and something that we have not seen unprecedented. And so I think what we would say to the students is that there's a reason why these ICE agents are wearing masks. And I believe it's the same reason that there is a group of men in Tennessee who also used to wear masks and white sheets. Because they were standing who they are.
Say it.
And they know they're on the wrong side of history. And then when we reclaim power, we will hold them accountable. Trump wants to call this alligator Alcatraz. I call it crocodile concentration camp. Because anytime you have an extrajudicial prison where people's rights are not respected, there's no normal legal process, that is a concentration camp. And we must call it what it is, and shame those who participated in this rhetoric, and let them know that just like they're trying to ban books because they're ashamed of what their grandparents did, that their children too will be ashamed of where they stood in this time.
Good afternoon. My name is Anthony Hendricks. I am from Franklin, Tennessee. My interests lie in this attack on the 14th Amendment. So, Congresswoman, thank you for being here in this great state, first of all. But I did want to understand what kinds of conversations you are engaged in on the Hill around this issue of birthright citizenship. And then I wanted to get your perspective on whether it's passed or not passed. What do we see going forward in terms of this attack?
There is a lot of conversation that's happening around the birthright citizenship. There are two groups, I think, that are very much fighting this cause in Congress. That's the Hispanic Caucus, that has an interest and understand that this is an attack on their community, and their community is the one that's being utilized to further this conversation and discourse. The other is the Congressional Black Caucus, which I am a proud member of. And what the Black Caucus understands is that their plight is being used as an excuse to strip the right that is enshrined in the 14th Amendment. What the conversation has been, you hear from, white nationalists like Stephen Miller, who will say, this was essentially created for those who were enslaved to become citizens of the country that they were enslaved in. This was to give them the right after emancipation. But the reality is, what the 14th Amendment says, anyone born in American soil has the right to be a citizen of this country. And the idea that we would threaten that is a threat to African Americans, and it should be a threat to every single American that is living on this soil. And we are fighting it aggressively. I think they counted a win when it said, not just one jurisdiction can make sure every other jurisdiction cannot rule on it. We know that the actual ruling will come in October. I am very optimistic that the Supreme Court will stay strong. They have been in matters that are concerning the Constitution, and it is my deep belief that is going to happen. But it is creating a lot of fear, not just people, and I just want you all to think about this. Since March, when the executive order to get rid of Birthright was implemented, there are so many kids that are born in the United States that do not know, right? Their families are in limbo. They don't know if their child is a citizen of this country or not. And many of those kids, because they are not born in the countries that their parents come from, do not automatically have citizenship. So we have so many kids that have been born in the last couple of months that are essentially rendered stateless. This is something, as lawmakers in the United States, as administrators, have frowned upon when other countries do that to children, right? We have pushed, we have sanctioned, we've said it's a human rights violation. We've tried to give incentives to other countries to implement this policy that we are now saying, as Americans, we no longer believe in. And it is my belief that when the administration says, as Americans, we don't believe in this, that is not a testament from what the American people actually believe in. So I do want the world to know, as I sit on this stage, that the American people are not consenting to this idea that we are against birthright citizenship.
Thank you so much for being brave and for being willing to ask a question and for being here with your mom today. This is why we're here. And there's two things I want to tell you, Tony, is that number one is that you being here is that you are like a superhero, that you are here trying to make our community safer, and that you are representing what we should be doing. And so you're a leader, and so when you go to school, I hope that you know that you are a leader that we're looking for this time. my heart hearing this question because the first thing that comes to my mind is the fact that here in the 5th Congressional District, within less than 5 years, we've had 2 school shootings. I just want to honor the victims of the Covenant mass shooting as well as the Antioch mass shooting, school shooting that just happened recently here, and recognize that when we talk about a school shooting, it's shameful that we have to say, which one are you talking about? Which school shooting are you talking about? And I think, number one, we have a duty in this time to say that we want to represent a politics that protects kids and not guns. That it's shameful that after the mass shooting at Covenant, there's only one piece of gun legislation that was passed in the Tennessee House of Representatives and in the Tennessee Senate, and that was to protect gun manufacturers from liability, not to protect our children, not to protect our community. That is shameful. And it represents a politics that says something about the heart of our community, not our community, but our community leaders, I should say, that you're willing to put the profits of the gun industry over the lives of our babies. There's something immoral, something constitutionally inconsistent, something sick in a city and a community that would be willing to do that. And so we have to call that out for what it is. Number one, we have to address what is happening with this proliferation of guns. Where in Tennessee, it's easier to get a gun than it is to vote. It's easier to get a gun than it is to get high quality public education. It's easier to get a gun than it is to access health care. That is shameful. And number two, when we hear the question of how do we protect our kids, I think about 2 other bills that recently passed. One, attacking the LGBTQ youth in our state. Tennessee had more anti-LGBTQ laws mainly going after students than any other state in the nation. That is not a priority that I've heard in this district. That is not something to say that we want to legislate bullying and targeting students. And number 2 is protecting our undocumented students and our immigrant students who are facing so much hate and fear and anxiety right now. Some of them have come to my office and families who are afraid to drive their children to school because they don't know if they'll be stopped. They don't know if they'll be charged under this new law that says you cannot harbor immigrants. Something that reckons back to slavery and this idea of harboring people. And so I think we have a duty to say to our children is that, particularly as elected officials, that we won't just release a statement, but we have to show up and put our bodies on the line and be present with them. And we have to be in our schools. We have to be present when ICE is in our community. Even as we're having this town hall, we were questioning, balancing safety with also the idea that some people are afraid of seeing law enforcement right now. In a school, they don't know the difference of MMPD, who we know the mayor says not allowed to but if you or somebody who does not know, you see law enforcement, you can't tell the difference sometimes. And so we have to find ways to rebuild trust in our community and accountability, and really start and say that those who have the platform should be the voices trying to show up in these areas and saying that we are here not to target or to demonize your community, but we're here to stand in solidarity. And to let Stephen Miller, we had Tom Holman saying that he's coming to Nashville. We hope that he does show up because he will meet the find out era of what it means to rising up. And when I say when we rise up, I want to commend all the activists and advocates here. When I say rise up, I want to be very clear because I don't want my words misconstrued. I say rising up. Nashville was one of the first cities to have a rapid response to report where ICE was, to show up and document it. That's what I mean by rise up. Nashville was the first community providing food and grocery delivery if people are afraid to go grocery shopping right now. That's what it means to rise up. Nashville was the first community to say that it's okay to have bilingual legal support, to showing up, letting people know that there are resources available if they need help navigating the system right now. That's what it means to rise up as a community, and that's what we're going to hope to see for our children and for future generations. To let them know that when we were here on our watch, that we did everything with every tool at our disposal to protect them and their future.
I just wanted to add this. I mean, Tony, likewise, I think you're an incredibly beautifully and brave young man. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm a mother of 4. And, I think about, what Justin said about legislating bullying. And it is not just legislating bullying, it's normalizing bullying by adults who are in power, and it's been really frustrating to see it take place, not just on a state level, on a local level, but on a national level. some of the debate about othering, about the divisiveness, about using derogatory words to describe our children, that has been part of the debates that we get to have in the halls of Congress or in the halls of in the assembly. It's heartbreaking because our young people are able to hear those. They're able to see adults denigrate themselves and denigrate what it means to be civil and denigrate what it means to be one that fosters an inclusive environment for all that respects one another. I think a lot about the First Lady who in the first Trump administration had championed Be Nice. And it is a reminder about just how they can't understand their own hypocrisy. It's really like shame. It's a shameful on a deep level, because you have the First Lady saying she wants children to be nice when her husband is the biggest, most disgusting bully on a national and international stage. When her party and the adults who are the leaders in her party are celebrating using the hard R word, the hard N word, right? Where they are discriminating against trans kids, where they have a problem with children being just happy and themselves, where they rejoice in the fact that children are committing suicide because their societies are not accepting them, when they are rejoicing in the fact that their children being celebrated as they cry from their own parents, and that we are forcing them into foster care when their parents are sent to countries that they are not from, and that they get lost in the system. That is not deportation, that's called kidnapping and human trafficking. And so it is hypocritical, it is disgusting, it is disturbing that we have people who talk about being nice, but every bit of their existence is about being mean and cruel.
Hi, thanks for being here. Possibly a bipartisan issue. My name is Jim Walden. I'm a member of Veterans for Peace and the Veterans for Peace Radio Hour on Radio International. And how do we get it? I'd like your comments on how do we deal with the runaway militarism within this country. And it's not only national, it's an international, it's a local. We've got an L3 Harris facility right here along West End that provides armament to Israel. And so I'd just like your comments on what do we do with our militarism. And as you both know, more than half of our discretionary funds go to the military. Thanks.
I mean, every single year, the military budget grows. We are in the approps process, which is when we allocate money to different departments in Congress. And this year's budget request includes $1 trillion for the Pentagon. And oftentimes what I found, I have not voted for a single Pentagon bill since I've been in Congress, and this is my 4th term. Because oftentimes what the allocation that members of Congress put forth is even higher than what our military leaders are asking for, right? And that in itself is about posture. That in itself is a lack of care for where resources should actually go. That is a lack of stewardship with our tax dollars. It is fascinating to have these, deficit hogs that are constantly willing to find money for the Pentagon and for the war machine, but they think we are radical for wanting universal health care. They think we are radical for wanting universal school meals. They think we're radical for wanting to make sure our kids get, world-class education. They think we're radical for wanting people not, for veterans to be taken care of. And so it is a huge problem. And one of the reasons is that twofold. One, we have members who represent districts where weapons are manufactured. And so whether it is about creating jobs for their constituents, and obviously they can transition away from that, or whether it is trying to make sure that the lobbyists are not pouring money against them in a primary or in a general. They have a vested interest to continue this bloated Pentagon budget. And the same goes when we talk about the $3.5 billion that we allocate to Israel. We will talk about a strategic allyship. I don't know what the strategy is. I don't know how we are served by $3.5 billion of our tax dollars going to a country where its citizens have free health care, where we have people dying because they can't get in line. When we are cutting $1.1 trillion out of Medicaid, that means from our seniors, from our babies, from mothers who are pregnant, shutting down nursing homes, healthcare centers. So the math ain't mathing, right? And it is important, I would say, for people's constituencies to hold them accountable for that. We oftentimes hold people accountable for domestic spending. We hold people accountable for domestic policies. Members of Congress are often not asked about foreign policy, which is the only thing that distinguishes us from the people who represent you on a local and a state level. That is why we have a bloated deficit. Right? The deficit doesn't exist without endless wars. The deficit does not exist without weapons rotting in warehouses around this country. The deficit doesn't exist without us giving countries money to be able to have weapons. The three highest recipients of foreign military aid of the United States are Israel, Jordan, and Egypt. Right? Israel, because they have a lobbyist that most people are afraid to stand up to. Right? Because they will dump millions and millions of dollars in your primary and in your general against you if you say one word. And Jordan and Egypt, because we bribe them so that they can sign a contract with Israel. So now we have to think as citizens of this country, as taxpayers. How does that serve us? How does it serve us when my grandmother can get cancer and not get treatment, but billions of dollars and trillions of dollars of my money, my tax dollars, that me and my neighbors paid, is going to a foreign nation? Right? How does it serve you when your school has leaking roofs, the children do not have food to eat, so their development is stunted, they have behavioral issues because they're hungry? We excuse adults when they're hungry and they're irritated and they're acting wild, right? What do we do with children? We medicate them, feed them. Maybe that would make the difference. I have seniors in my district, and it breaks my heart. I have seniors in my district. Rent keeps going up. They live on a fixed income. And every time I do a town hall at a senior housing, the number one thing they say to me is, how do I account for 13%, 14% increase in my rent when that is not the adjusted cost of living for my Social Security check? How do I account for the deductibles? How do I account for my food costs rising? How do I account for the cost of my medication? I am 65, I'm 70, I'm 75. I have to go back to waitressing. I have to pick up a shift. I have to go to the food pantry. I have to beg. I'm ashamed to ask my kids for a handout. And we are spending trillions and trillions of dollars on wars that are not ours, right? Creating more disabled veterans by the minute. We are droning countries we have no business in droning every single day. So we, I think, as citizens, have to take that question into the ballot box. That's how things change. I represent a district that is very anti-war. People call me anti-American when I talk like this. I think I'm actually pro-American in saying this. People have, spent my first primary, there were nearly $20 million spent against me because I was not willing to vote to send that $3.5 billion to Israel. And my constituents said, thank you for recognizing that that money should be spent to feed our children, to help our veterans, take care of our seniors, build our roads. We appreciate that, and we're gonna elect you with 20 points more than your opponent. And so when there is a reward for people standing up for you, more members of Congress will put your interests first before the lobbyists.
Yes. So I'm worried. I'm 22. I'm trying to save up for a house, and no matter what I do, it feels as if I'm saving most of my checks every week, and the housing rate just keeps going up. And what do we do about that in society, like as property prices increase?
You take this first.
I think this is I don't know if you know this, Congresswoman. Tennessee does not have a state minimum wage. We default to the federal, which is $7.25.
Yeah.
And we know that you can't survive off of $7.25. We know that this is the working class part of our district, and we know that every year in the General Assembly we give millions of dollars of subsidies to Amazon. We subsidize FedEx for their airport in Memphis. We subsidize all these corporations coming here. Even the city government is paying for these stadiums, but we don't give money to the people to live with dignity and decency and to be able to have housing. I mean, I think it is something that we see. One thing we are always talking to folks who are at the restaurants who also get tip salary, which is poverty wages, and we know that every time we've had a conversation at the state level, we're told that it's going to hurt the corporations if we try and raise the wage. Even though what we're seeing in Tennessee is massive wealth inequality, where you're seeing it increase, where we're paying for these corporations to come here and their CEOs. I had a bill called the CEO Pay Disparity Act that would enact.
I did too when I was.
You did?
I did too when I was in the State House.
Well, you're my big sister. to increase the excise tax on corporations where the CEO makes more than 25 times the average worker. Corporations like Walmart, corporations like McDonald's, where we are actually subsidizing these corporations, we're paying for them to be on health care. We as taxpayers, we're paying when the corporations have the money to do it. And so what we have to start doing is pushing back against this narrative that is really a narrative that says if you're poor, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, but if you're wealthy, we're going to give you a red carpet and pay for you to have new shoes every week. I think we have to talk about what is the reality in Tennessee right now. And the reality in Tennessee is that we are a government that has been hijacked by special interests. If you come on the Hill in the Tennessee State Capitol, much like my sister here, we do not meet with lobbyists. Actually, they don't even come to our floor, the fourth floor. They spend their time on the sixth floor with the speaker and the Republican majority is, trying to buy legislation. We just passed the largest tax cut in Tennessee history. The the largest tax cut in Tennessee's history. At a time where we're saying that we can't raise the wages of our teachers. At a time when we cannot move our schools out of flood zones. At a time when we cannot fund, cleaner infrastructure for our communities, addressing the climate crisis that's happening with increased flooding. We were told we don't have money in the budget for that, but we're getting money for these corporations. And so I think what it's going to take is going to take a tradition of good struggle to show up and to really let them know that this is not about left versus right, but this is about top versus bottom. And that the majority of the people in the state don't have anything in common with Elon Musk. That if you look around, most of us will have more in common with the neighbors we're told to demonize than we do with these billionaires and corporate interests who hijack our democracy. And we have to remind people of that. And I want to say too, right now we've got a few emails from folks who are Republicans who said, can we come to the town hall? And we said, of course, because we wanted to make sure that you're here. And first of all, I want to say welcome. We're not a group that says, I told you so, but we're a group to say that I'm sorry that you were lied to, but welcome to our movement. We are a big And I'm not saying we're not abstract. I'm the ranking member in the Agriculture Committee. I met with farmers who are struggling right now because of the tariff wars that are happening, raising the cost of fertilizer up 25%, cutting contracts that the farmers had with USAID to sell their soybeans. I've been trying to state meeting with farmers, and we told them the same thing. Welcome to our movement. We're here to build together a agrarian populist movement in the state. To the workers who said that they were told they thought that immigrants were taking their jobs, but now recognize that that is a lie, and that is something that is extreme, immoral, and that's the politics of plantation politics, as I call it. Welcome to our movement. Welcome here. To the Daily Wire, who is here, welcome here. You are welcome too to finally publish some truth about what's happening in our state. And so, thank you for being here, and let's build a movement together as just working class people, because the rising tide lifts all ships.
I just wanted to add to what Justin said. I'm not a homeowner. I rent, and I think that's where a lot of millennials are. We're on that boat. And I'm an older millennial. I also have kids that are now thinking about buying a home and starting a family and that kind of thing. And it is really heartbreaking to know that you're not going to be able to make enough. You're not going to be able to save enough. And even if you did, you're not going to have a housing market where you can actually buy a home. And there are a couple of reasons why that's happening. We know that hedge funds have been buying up homes, driving up the prices. We know that Airbnb has a lot of vacant homes that is responsible for a lot of the prices that are jacking up. We know that the tariffs that are currently in place are also going to be responsible with even higher costs for home ownership. And when we think about what kind of support we should be providing to people who we want, instead of saying lift yourself up from your bootstraps, we want to actually give people straps. Right? If we were serious about that, because many people don't have that, you would want to create subsidies for people to be able to purchase a home and have the support that they need, at least a down payment of $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. That can be helpful, but that's not what we're doing. And when we think about tax cuts, our current tax cut that we just passed, that Trump signed into law, it is the biggest wealth transfer from the poorest of Americans to the richest of Americans. So if you are making less than $34,000, you will save about $150. If you are making $4,550,000 to $1.1 million, you will save $21,000. Now, if you think about this, who needs more in support? The person making $1,450,000 to $1 million, or the person making less than $34,000? Now, if you're a small business owner, you've got a small security firm, or you have you're in the development sector and you have a truck. In order for you to have deductibles, you have to utilize your vehicle full time. Now, if you buy a private jet worth $10 million and a 37% tax bracket, instead of paying $3.7 million in taxes, which you should, you do not have to pay if you use that private plane for part-time. Now, when we talk about the system being rigged for the wealthy, we are not making this up, right? It is this, I mean, we're Americans, right? We all have an aspiration to constantly move through the income brackets. So we have a fascination with people who make it. We root for them, right? Like you get really excited. And so, when they're talking about private jets, you're like, that's my aspiration. I want a private jet at some point in my life. But when you have a tax bill that gives that subsidy to people who can afford, that tax cut to people who can afford a private plane, and you are unwilling to do that for the construction worker who definitely needs that truck in order to make ends meet. Maybe they've got 2 kids, they have a little tiny house, right? They're making 50, 60, 70. They can use that tax cut. But that's not what we're doing. And you'll hear about the tip tax, tax on tips, right? That's up to $25,000, only for 3 years, while the tax cuts for the wealthy, for the millionaires and the billionaires, are permanent.
Change it.
Right? Yeah, but we need the majority. We don't have it at the moment. But that's what the Republicans are selling. They're selling you that we did this for tipped wages. And that's if you make it up to 20, and it's deductible. Right? So you're not getting it off of your payroll tax. You'll still pay payroll tax. And so when you're filing your tax return, if you made up to $25,000, you can have that deductible, right? What they don't tell you is the fine print, because they want to sell you what sounds, right, interesting to the poor and the working class. And the reality is, in this bill, they did not take care of the working and the poor. They took care of the wealthy and the billionaires.
And Congresswoman, I just want to check if I don't have the notes in front of me. Did any of us vote for that?
Yes. Happily.
This lady's had her hand up for a while, so I want to make sure you get your question.
Do you want to come up here?
Yeah.
Give you. Oh, there you go.
You've been standing,
Oh, okay.
so we want to make sure.
He's saying it's the last question.
Okay.
You want to announce that?
Hello, thank you so much for being here. We have had a great opportunity to have Elizabeth Warren visit us recently, and I've been pulling for Bernie to come as well. I have had the opportunity, being a resident of Tennessee, to get into rural Tennessee. And I know that in a previous election, people in big numbers were pulling for the progressive movement. And Hillary became the nominee, and I honored that. But Tennessee has a voting problem. And so I want to kind of give a twofold question, because you've asked the questions. And I'll start with our immigrant concern. As you know, right now we have an immigrant system that has gone to cruelty instead of humanity. And we must turn that around. And I understand that the bill that has been offered, I'm asking if we can include, not only at state level, but at a federal level, a law that says all our ICE all of our ICE agents are unmasked, wear name tag and cameras, and we know the whereabouts of anyone that was abducted and where they are. And then I want to turn to the voting concern that we have. Tennessee is not always as red as we are now. I grew up in Tennessee. And so I think that the other point that I want to add to, and thank everyone that's also brought it up is voting. Everything that we're talking about threads to where our legislators are voting out of our best interests. So I think Tennessee needs a lot of help. I want us to join the forces that we have here that are so powerful. Justin Jones, thank you. And so I ask you to send in the guard. Help us turn Tennessee, because I think we can turn Tennessee. I think there are people in rural Tennessee that do not know that their representatives are not representing them. And Marsha Blackburn and Haggerty and Ogles and Mary Littleton's district. So we need help turning this around. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. And I think this will be our last question, as we have to get to another thing. I will answer the immigration question. We did actually introduce a national legislation to do what you said, to unmask. It right now, as current law exists, as law enforcement is supposed to identify themselves. They are supposed to show you their badge. They are supposed to show you their warrant. They are supposed to be transparent in why they are approaching you. It is really, and it's been alluded to many a times, it is very frightening in the way in which they're carrying themselves. It feels un-American in many ways to have, random looking masked humans that are fastly jumping out of an unmarked car, running toward a young woman just walking down the street or a young man walking down the street. That just is very frightening. And that image in itself that has been going around, not just in the United States, but around the world. And as I've recently traveled, people are like, what is happening in America? How is this possible? Because I always come back to this idea that people think of us as leaders. People think of us as the ones who truly uphold human rights and are about a democracy that is transparent, not corrupt. And leaders that lead with integrity. And so when they see these kind of images coming out of America, to them it is very shocking, and it should be to all of us as Americans, to feel embarrassed in the fact that that's what people are seeing, because that is not us. And so yes, we are working on that, and I think, and one of the other things, the Intercept just reported on work that we are doing, trying to make sure that we are able to identify every single person that has been detained, where they are currently located, what detention centers they're being held, who has been transported out of the, who has been kidnapped and trafficked out of the country, and how many people have been sent as part of regular deportation, sent to, meaning that they were sent to the country they came from. Because that is the legal definition of deportations, that you get deported to your country of origin. And so those are things that we are working through to try to figure out. And I'll let Justin have the last word, but I do believe, I am an optimist. I believe that conversations with neighbors changes the way in which we see one another, the way in which we think about policy, and the way in which we vote, right? I first ran for a district that was being represented by someone who was there for 44 years. I remember, one of my former teachers saying, if you get 10% of the vote, Ilhan, you should pat yourself in the back as a first-time candidate. Not only did I win, I won by 12 points. And we did that by taking precincts that traditionally had 100 people voted and turning them into precincts where thousands vote. And so it is possible that we can shift the narrative about what people's vote means and how it counts, not just saying elections have consequences, but them understanding what those consequences are. And actually also, I think on our side, we need to run candidates who have a heart, who have ideas about what it means to care about people, and to forward policies that are not created in a lab, but that are created with the constituents that we want to serve.
That's it. I mean, I just want to say again, mind-blowing to see how many people said this was their first town hall. But I know that this will not be our last town hall. If we can do this in 3 days, imagine what we can do in 3 months. Imagine if we have time to organize this district and show up from Antioch to Williamson County to Murray County to Wilson County, all parts of this district, the 5th Congressional District here in Tennessee. I believe that we can change this district. And I believe that we'll bring together to hold me over accountable. And what this is holding for this time is that we are seeing our community rise up and show up in ways that we have not seen before. It's in fact terrifying. Marsha and Andy so much that they're trying to file distraction legislation is what we call it. Talk about doxing ICE agents when we know that there's a real doxing issue that minimizes that. That, you know, one thing I just want to talk about, just again, the courage, something that's on our heart is that as we're sitting here, we are with the Congresswoman, and the news is kind of forgotten, but just a few weeks ago, there was an attack against lawmakers in Minnesota. Yes. And we seem to have forgotten that. We have not forgotten, but the media has forgotten to talk about what is happening and normalize this. We are in dangerous times. It's going to require a courageous witness that says that we are a movement of neighbors who say that we're going to protect our neighbors when ICE comes, that we're going to protect our neighbors when you try and attack trans kids, that we're going to stand up when you come for the Muslim community, that we're going to be a community that goes off even to the rural areas and say we're fighting for you and your children too. That's what it looks like in this time. And so I hope that we continue to build, we have information to keep you updated, that this is not going to be a one-time town hall. And in fact, we know that people are nervous because we've seen some interesting messaging around this. And they're nervous that we're here today because they were not expecting us to fill a classroom, nonetheless, an entire auditorium at Cambridge High School. You all did that. Your presence did that. And so when you see the messaging, when you see the lies, let them know that you came and heard a little bit of truth today. Let them know that you want to debunk the mythologies that try and make us a movement of left versus right instead of right versus wrong. Let them know that you're going to debunk the movement that try and demonize immigrants and refugees in our Muslim community and pit us against each other. And let them know that we are a movement that is multiracial, multi-generational, multi-faith, multi-ethnic, that is going to transform the South. And that if we can transform the South, Congresswoman, I believe we can transform this nation. If we can transform a state like Tennessee, we can transform this nation. And so power to the people, power to the people, power to the people, power to the people. What is our thing here? We have to run to another event, but we want to give opportunity. If anybody wants to do photos, we're going to have a brief photo line. But because of time, we just have to do quick photos. And so we're just so grateful for everyone who's here. But if you want to come on the ramp, we'll just come up stage real quick because we just want to honor the Congresswoman's time and just go. Also want to make sure that you all have an opportunity to come up if you can. And so we'll make a line on the ramp right here for anybody who would like to take a photo with the Congresswoman.